Imagine a ship so grand, so massive, and so masterfully engineered that the world declared it unsinkable. Now, imagine that same masterpiece resting in two broken pieces, 2 miles down in the crushing darkness of the Atlantic Ocean, all because of a single missing key. On a cold, rainy night in New York, 40,000 people stood in silence, staring at the horizon. They weren't waiting for a celebration, they were waiting for a ghost story to dock. They were waiting for the survivors of a tragedy that would haunt humanity for over 100 years. How did the world's greatest dream turn into its most terrifying nightmare? Let's step back onto the deck of the RMS Titanic.
Hello and welcome. If you're new here, welcome to Amazing 5.
It is April 10th, 1912. The air in Southampton, England is electric. Over 100,000 people have gathered to witness history. Towering above the pier is a mountain of steel, the RMS Titanic. She is 269 meters long and as tall as an 11-story building. To the people of 1912, she was a miracle. Inside, she wasn't just a ship, she was a floating palace. There were heated swimming pools, a high-tech gym, 4-story grand staircases, and restaurants that rivaled the best in Paris. Whether you were a millionaire in a velvet-lined suite or an immigrant in a simple cabin, you felt safe. You were told this ship was a fortress. With a double-bottom hull and 16 watertight compartments, the legend was that even if she hit a rock, she would simply float until help arrived. But as the Titanic pulled away from the dock, and a series of small, invisible mistakes were already beginning to weave a web of doom. One of the most tragic what-ifs happened before the ship even left. A senior officer named David Blair was reassigned at the last minute. In his hurry to pack his bags and leave the ship, he accidentally kept a small brass key in his pocket. That key belonged to the locker containing the binoculars for the lookouts in the crow's nest. Because of that missing key, the men tasked with spotting danger were forced to rely on their naked eyes in the pitch-black night. As the ship accelerated across the Atlantic, the warnings began to pour in. Other ships, like the Mesaba and the SS Californian, sent wireless radio messages warning of massive ice fields ahead. However, Bruce Ismay, the owner of the company, was on board and wanted to break speed records. He pressured Captain Edward Smith to keep the engines at full roar, 40 kilometers per hour, despite the warnings. The Titanic was racing blindly into a trap. April 14th, 11:40 p.m. The sea was hauntingly calm, like a mirror. This was actually a problem. Usually, waves break against the base of an iceberg, creating a white foam that can be seen from miles away. On this night, there were no waves. Suddenly, lookout Frederick Fleet saw a dark shape rising out of the water. "Iceberg! Right ahead!" he screamed. The officers tried to turn the giant ship, but she was moving too fast. Instead of a head-on collision, which she might have survived, the iceberg scraped along her side. It popped the rivets in the steel plates like buttons on a shirt. In the bridge, Captain Smith looked at the blueprints and felt his heart stop. 6 compartments were flooding. The ship was designed to stay afloat with 4. The unsinkable ship had less than 3 hours to live. The chaos that followed was a test of the human spirit. There were over 2,200 people on board, but only enough lifeboats for 1,200. The rule was women and children first, but the fear was contagious. Some lifeboats were lowered half empty because people were too afraid to jump or didn't believe the ship was actually sinking. Nearby, the SS Californian was only 37 kilometers away. Her crew actually saw the Titanic's distress flares lighting up the sky. But because their radio operator had gone to bed and turned off his equipment, they never heard the cries for help. They thought the flares were just a company celebration. Meanwhile, the wireless operator Jack Phillips stayed at his post until the very end, his fingers tapping out SOS signals even as the freezing water swirled around his knees. He managed to reach the Carpathia, but it was 107 kilometers away, a 4-hour journey. Time had run out. At 2:20 a.m., the Titanic tilted into the air, her lights flickering one last time before snapping into darkness. Under the immense pressure, the ship groaned and split in two. The bow and stern sank separately into the abyss. Over 1,500 people were left in the water. The temperature was -2 degrees Celsius. In such cold, a human body can only survive for 15 to 30 minutes. The silence that followed the sinking was eventually broken only by the sound of the Carpathia arriving at dawn to pick up the 706 survivors who remained. For 73 years, the Titanic was lost to the world. It wasn't until 1985 that oceanographer Robert Ballard found her resting place. His discovery answered a chilling question. Why did the steel break so easily? Investigation showed that the rivets were made of low-grade cast iron to save money. In the freezing water, they became brittle. The Ocean's unsinkable ship had been defeated by cost-cutting and human ego. Today, the Titanic is slowly being eaten away by metal-consuming bacteria. Scientists say that in a few decades, she will be nothing but a rust stain on the ocean floor. But while the steel may vanish, the story will never die. It remains a powerful lesson about the cost of pride, the value of a single key, and the fragility of human life against the raw power of nature. When the Carpathia finally arrived in New York on that rainy night, she brought more than survivors. She brought a warning that the world would never forget.